Do you know what it feels like to be treated as though you're already dead while you're still breathing, still thinking, still very much alive? I didn't know either. Until the day my own son locked me in a nursing home and moved into my house as if I were nothing but a ghost of his past. I'm not telling you this for pity. I'm telling you because people like me, mothers, fathers, grandparents, are often silenced, forgotten, written off. But my story isn't one of silence. It's a story of how underestimation can be the sharpest weapon someone hands you, and how revenge doesn't always come with fire and fury, but with patience, precision, and the kind of cold clarity that only comes from heartbreak. It all began on a Sunday. The kind of Sunday when you expect family around the table, laughter in the kitchen, the smell of bread in the oven. Instead, I found myself sitting across from my son Michael as he told me, without blinking, that I was too old, too slow, and too much of a burden. Those words didn't just sting. They split something inside me. I raised him. I carried him. And yet, there he sat, rehearsed and calm, telling me it was time for me to go. At first, I thought he was joking. A bad one, but still a joke. But then he pulled out paperwork, brochures of nursing homes, legal documents, signatures already half-scribbled. My house, my little cottage that had been in the family for 3 generations, was already in his name. He had planned it all. "Mom," he said, in that dismissive tone children sometimes use when they think they are smarter than you, "you'll be better off there. More care. More attention. And you don't have to worry about the house anymore. I'll take care of it." Take care of it. That was his way of saying, it's mine now. I remember staring at my hands. Wrinkled, yes. A little shaky, yes. But not useless. Not lifeless. These were the same hands that held him through fevers, wiped his tears, cooked his meals, worked late nights to keep food on the table after his father passed. And yet, to him, they were just evidence of weakness. The next week was a blur. Boxes packed without my consent. A van pulling into the driveway. Strangers moving my furniture. And then, the final insult. The heavy, locked doors of a nursing home closing behind me. Let me pause here, because maybe you're wondering, what's so terrible about a nursing home? Some people thrive in them, find companionship, receive care. But this wasn't a choice I made. This was exile. This was my son saying, "You are no longer welcome in your own life." Inside, the halls smelled of disinfectant and overcooked vegetables. The walls were beige, the kind of beige that sucks the spirit out of you. And the people, oh, the people. Some were kind, some were lost in the fog of dementia, some were simply waiting for the end. I was not ready to wait. That's the part Michael didn't understand. He thought age equals weakness, but he forgot that age also equals wisdom. That the quiet woman he dismissed still had a mind sharper than he could imagine. For the first days, I played along. I let the nurses fuss over me, let Michael believe he had won. I didn't call, didn't beg, didn't complain. That silence lulled him into comfort, into arrogance. And in that silence, I began to plan. Because while he thought I'd fade away, I was watching, listening, learning. And every day I spent locked away was another day I sharpened the blade of my revenge, not out of cruelty, but out of justice. I started small. Every time Michael visited, which wasn't often, I noticed things. The car he drove, shiny and new, bought with the money he took from selling my late husband's tools. The watch on his wrist, a gift I had once given him when he graduated college, now a symbol of how far he had strayed. And the way he talked about his house with pride, as though he had built it himself, brick by brick. That house wasn't just wood and stone. It was my memory, my sweat, my years of sacrifice. And he had stolen it. So tell me, what does a mother do when her own child betrays her like that? Do you forgive? Do you forget? Or do you remind him that blood runs both ways, that the same veins he came from can just as easily carry the cold fire of vengeance? The answer came to me one evening in the nursing home cafeteria, where the food was bland, but the gossip was rich. An old man named Gerald told me about his daughter, how she had tricked him into signing over property, how he fought back with the law and won. The courts, he said, don't look kindly on elder abuse, especially when you have evidence. And that was when the idea began to bloom. I wasn't just going to take my house back. I was going to take back everything Michael valued. His comfort, his pride, his family, piece by piece, until he was left with nothing but regret. But to do that, I had to be patient. Revenge isn't served hot, it's brewed slowly, like the strongest tea. And so, I waited. Now, I know some of you listening might be leaning closer, asking, but how did you do it? How can someone in a nursing home fight back? Well, that's where Michael made his biggest mistake. He underestimated not just me, but the network of forgotten souls around me. Because let me tell you, old age doesn't kill ambition. It just makes you smarter about how you pursue it. Inside that nursing home, I found allies. A retired lawyer who still remembered every trick in the book. A former nurse who knew how to access records and paperwork. Even a quiet woman who had once been a private investigator, her memory sharp as a blade despite her frail body. Together, we weren't just residents. We were conspirators. While Michael lived comfortably in my home, thinking he had erased me, I was gathering strength. Every visit he made, I smiled, nodded, and acted frail. But behind those smiles was a storm he couldn't see coming. And when the first crack in his perfect little world appeared, I was ready to widen it. But I won't tell you just yet what that crack was. Let's just say it involved someone Michael loved more than himself, and how quickly love can turn to liability when you've built your happiness on betrayal. Stay with me, because what happened next wasn't just revenge. It was justice, and it was the moment my son learned the hardest lesson of his life. The first crack came in the form of Michael's wife, Anna. She was younger than him, beautiful in that polished, suburban way, with nails always painted and a smile that rarely reached her eyes. When she came to visit me, once, maybe twice in those early weeks, I could tell she wasn't there out of guilt or affection. She was there to check on the investment. My house. My forced absence. But Anna underestimated me too. She didn't know that while she smiled politely and spoke in clipped, shallow sentences, I was studying her. Every twitch of her lips, every sideways glance at Michael when he mentioned money, every sigh when she thought I wasn't listening. She wasn't loyal to him. Not truly. She was loyal to what he could provide. And that was a weakness. One day, while Michael was distracted bragging about his new promotion, Anna leaned closer to me and whispered, "It's not so bad here, is it? At least you're looked after." I met her eyes, steady and unblinking, and simply said, "Appearances can be deceiving." She didn't like that. I saw the discomfort flash across her face. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't the only one plotting. Now, you have to understand something about betrayal. It rarely comes from a stranger. It comes from the people closest to you, the ones who know where your heart beats strongest. And Michael had surrounded himself with people who were loyal only as long as it benefited them. That was the crack I widened. I started writing letters. Real letters, in careful cursive, with words chosen like seeds. Some went to Anna, reminders of how easily fortunes can shift, hints that Michael had hidden things from her, truths she might not want to face but would gnaw at her in the quiet hours. Others went to Michael's colleagues, little anonymous notes that questioned his ethics at work, his sudden wealth, the suspicious speed with which he acquired property. And still others went to neighbors, who had always whispered about my house with envy, now given reason to whisper louder. You might think it cruel. But tell me, was it any crueler than being locked away by your own child, erased from your own life? The beauty of it was this: Michael had no idea where the storm was coming from. He thought I was locked up, harmless, fading. He never considered that I had allies who could slip letters into the mail, who could spread words in just the right ears. He never imagined the walls of his perfect little life would start to close in from all directions. Meanwhile, inside the nursing home, my army grew. Gerald, the retired lawyer, began drafting documents. He explained elder abuse statutes to me late into the night, his voice low and steady like the hum of justice itself. Margaret, the former nurse, taught me how to request copies of medical and legal records, how to leave a trail Michael couldn't erase. And Judith, the ex-investigator, showed me how to ask questions that seemed innocent but revealed everything. With every passing week, I felt less like a prisoner and more like a general preparing for war. But war isn't won only with strategy. It's won with timing. The first explosion hit Michael when Anna confronted him. I wasn't there, of course, but I can imagine it. Her sharp voice cutting through his smugness, demanding answers about a bank account he hadn't told her about. About money withdrawn in strange amounts. About rumors she heard from a concerned neighbor. Michael came to visit me after that, his face tight, his smile forced. "Mom," he said, "I don't know what people have been telling Anna, but you stay out of it, all right?" I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "Out of what, dear?" He narrowed his eyes. He didn't have proof, but he suspected. Oh, suspicion is such a delicious seed to plant. It grows wild, twisting into every corner of a guilty mind. And while he wrestled with his marriage, I prepared my legal strike. Gerald helped me contact an advocacy group for elder rights. They were eager, hungry, even, to expose cases like mine. We gathered evidence, the forced transfer of my property, the signatures taken without consent, the abrupt move into the nursing home. It wasn't just betrayal. It was exploitation. But I didn't rush. No, I let Michael stew. I let him think he still had control. Because sometimes, the sweetest victory is letting your enemy dance on the edge of a cliff before you give the final push. And the cliff came sooner than he expected. One evening, I overheard a nurse talking about a community event, a fundraising gala Michael and Anna were hosting at their house. Oh, the irony. My home, filled with strangers, wine glasses clinking, laughter spilling out where my husband's voice once filled the halls. That night, as I lay in my narrow nursing home bed, staring at the ceiling, I made my decision. I wasn't just going to take him to court. I was going to walk back into that house, into that event, and remind everyone exactly whose home it truly was. The night of the gala arrived, and with the help of Judith and Margaret, I slipped out. Yes, slipped out. Because old age doesn't mean helplessness. It means people stop looking closely, stop expecting you to move with purpose. They forgot I still had fire in my veins. I remember the look on Michael's face when I walked through the front door. Conversations halted. Music seemed to stutter. Guests turned their heads. And there I was, in my modest dress, standing tall, every wrinkle on my face lit with defiance. "Welcome to my home," I said. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Michael's cheeks flushed red. Anna's lips curled into the faintest smirk. And the guests began whispering. You see, people love scandal more than they love champagne. Michael rushed to my side, hissing under his breath. "What are you doing here? You're embarrassing me." I leaned closer, my voice steady as stone. "No, Michael. You embarrassed yourself the day you betrayed your own mother." That night wasn't the end. Far from it. But it was the beginning of the unraveling. Because after that, no one looked at him the same way. Not his wife, not his friends, not his colleagues. The mask had cracked, and beneath it was a man who had built his success on betrayal. And I was only just getting started. Because the next blow? That one would take away the thing Michael loved more than money, more than reputation, more even than his house. It would take away his legacy. And when it came, he would never recover. Right. After that night at the gala, things moved faster than even I expected. Michael avoided me for weeks, too embarrassed, or perhaps too frightened, to face me again. But his silence was a gift, because it gave me the space to tighten the noose around everything he thought he owned. Gerald and I filed the first set of documents. Elder exploitation, fraud, coercion. Words that looked dry on paper but cut deep in the courtroom. The advocacy group backed me, their lawyers salivating at the chance to make an example of my son. I gave them evidence, signed papers I hadn't consented to, witnesses who saw me packed off to the nursing home against my will, neighbors who remembered my protests when the moving van came. The law moves slowly, but guilt moves quickly. And Michael? He was already cracking. Anna came to see me alone one afternoon. Her perfume arrived before she did, sweet, suffocating, like roses left too long in stagnant water. She sat across from me in the nursing home's sterile visiting room, crossing her legs carefully. You know, she began, her tone sharper than usual. Michael hasn't been himself. Ever since that stunt you pulled at the gala. I smiled. A stunt? No, dear. That was a reminder. A mother's voice doesn't disappear just because her son wishes it. Her lips tightened. You're going to ruin him. And here's where her mask slipped, just a little. She wasn't pleading for Michael's sake. She was pleading for herself, for the lifestyle she clung to like ivy on a crumbling wall. Tell me, Anna, I asked softly. Do you love him? Or do you love what he provides? She didn't answer. Her silence was my answer. When she left, I knew my suspicions were right. Anna wasn't my enemy. She was a weapon waiting to be turned. And turn she did. Weeks later, I heard through Judith, who had ways of extracting information, that Anna had been speaking to a divorce lawyer. Apparently, the cracks in their marriage had widened into fissures. Money missing from accounts. Michael's temper flaring. Rumors of another woman at his office. I didn't need to push. I just needed to wait. While Michael wrestled with his failing marriage, I prepared the next phase of my plan. The legal strike was already in motion, but court cases can drag on. What I needed was something immediate. Something public. So, with Gerald's guidance, I contacted a journalist. A young woman, hungry for a story, the kind that would make people click and share. She came to the nursing home with a notebook and a recorder, and I told her everything. Not just the betrayal, but the broader picture. How so many elders are silenced, how families strip them of dignity, of homes, of voices. She listened, wide-eyed, nodding, scribbling furiously. And when the article came out, the headline burned across the town like wildfire. Son accused of forcing mother into nursing home, taking her family home without consent. Oh, how quickly people turn when they smell scandal. Michael's colleagues at work whispered behind his back. His neighbors, once envious of his inheritance, now looked at him with disgust. Parents at his children's school muttered that if he could betray his own mother, what kind of man was he really? And Anna, Anna saw the writing on the wall. She filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, though everyone knew the truth. The night I heard that news, I lay awake in my nursing home bed and whispered into the darkness, "That's one thing gone, Michael. One thing you'll never get back." But I wasn't finished. Because there was still the matter of my house. The court date finally came, months after the gala. I arrived in a simple navy dress, my gray hair tied back neatly, my allies surrounding me like a shield. Gerald walked at my side, steady as ever. Michael sat across the courtroom, his face pale, his eyes darting nervously. He didn't look like the smug man who once told me I was a burden. He looked like a boy caught stealing candy, desperate for someone to believe his lies. The judge listened carefully. My lawyers laid out the evidence, how the signatures were coerced, how the transfer was rushed, how the nursing home admission was done without my consent. Witness after witness testified, neighbors, nurses, even a few staff from the moving company who remembered my protests. When Michael's lawyer tried to argue that I was confused or incapable of making decisions, I leaned forward and spoke clearly. Confused? I remember every detail. I remember the ink of the pen he shoved in my hand. I remember the movers hauling out my furniture while I begged them to stop. I remember my son's voice, calm and cold, telling me this was for the best. I am not confused. I am betrayed. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge leaned back, watching me with a new kind of respect. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He couldn't meet my eyes. By the end of the day, the ruling came down. The house, my house, was to be returned to me. The transfer deemed invalid. And further, Michael would face investigation for elder exploitation. I thought I would cry. I thought I would feel relief. But instead, what I felt was something deeper. A steel-cold satisfaction that justice, for once, had not turned away from someone like me. Still, I wasn't naive. I knew Michael wouldn't give up easily. He was too prideful, too stubborn. And I was right. A week later, he showed up at the nursing home, his face twisted with anger. "You think you've won, don't you?" he spat. "You think you can just take everything back?" I looked at him calmly. "No, Michael. I don't think. I know." His fists clenched at his sides. "You've ruined me." And that, right there, was the truth. Not the courts. Not Anna. Not the journalist. Me. His mother. The very person he thought he could erase. Ruined. I whispered. "No, Michael. I simply gave you what you gave me. Emptiness. Abandonment. Loss. That's not ruin. That's justice." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him, leaving a silence so heavy the nurses peeked in to check on me. But I just smiled. Because I knew the worst was still to come. You see, Michael still had his pride. He still had the illusion of control. But soon, I would take away the last thing he clung to. The thing that cut deeper than money, deeper than marriage, deeper than reputation. His children. Because if there was one lesson I wanted him to learn, it was this. A parent's love is not unconditional when that parent has been betrayed. And the day would come when his own children would see him for who he truly was. And I would be there to show them. When Michael stormed out of the nursing home that day, I thought it might be the last time I'd see him. But I was wrong. Because Michael still had one thing left to cling to, one anchor that kept him believing he wasn't a complete failure. His children. 2 of them. Emily and Jacob. My grandchildren. I hadn't seen them much since Michael forced me into the home. Children don't get a say in family betrayals. They are dragged along, told stories, fed lies. Michael told them I was sick, that I needed special care, and that the house was now theirs to enjoy. He made it sound like I had chosen to leave, like I had vanished willingly into some quiet, clinical sunset. But children are sharper than we think. Their eyes catch what adults ignore. And when Emily, the elder of the 2, came to visit me one afternoon, her eyes brimmed with questions she wasn't supposed to ask. "Grandma," she whispered, leaning close so the nurse wouldn't hear. "Why did you let Dad put you here?" Her innocence cut deeper than Michael's cruelty ever could. "I didn't let him, sweetheart," I told her softly. "He made me. But I'm still me. And I still love you. Don't you ever forget that." She looked down at her small hands, fingers twisting nervously. "Daddy said you couldn't take care of yourself anymore. That you wanted to be here." I reached out, my hand trembling but steady enough to hold hers. "Emily, sometimes people say things that aren't true because it makes them feel less guilty. You must always remember, your grandmother didn't leave you. She was taken away." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. And in that nod, I saw the crack widen. The truth had begun to seep in. From then on, whenever Emily visited, I told her little pieces. Not the whole story, she was still a child, but truths wrapped in gentle words. How her grandfather had built the house with his own hands. How I had worked night shifts so her father could go to school. How the garden outside that house was planted not for Michael, but for the grandchildren who were meant to grow up among its flowers. Jacob was younger, more impressionable, still clinging to his father's version of events. But children talk, and Emily began planting seeds of doubt in her brother's mind. It wasn't about turning them against their father. It was about showing them who I truly was. Making sure Michael couldn't erase me from their hearts the way he tried to erase me from that house. Meanwhile, the legal victory over the property made headlines, and whispers about Michael's cruelty spread further. His job, once his pride, now dangled by a thread as his employers questioned whether a man accused of elder abuse could be trusted in a position of responsibility. One afternoon, as I sat in the nursing home garden, Gerald chuckled beside me. "He's losing ground faster than quicksand," he said. Won't be long before he's got nothing left to stand on. But I wasn't smiling, because I knew the hardest blow was yet to come. And it came sooner than I expected. Emily came to me again, this time with anger in her voice. "Grandma," she whispered, her fists balled. "Dad said you're lying. He said you're making things up to hurt him." I drew her close, my arms wrapping around her tiny shoulders. "Sweetheart," I murmured, "the truth doesn't need to shout. It just waits. And one day, you'll see it for yourself." She pulled back, her face determined in a way that reminded me of myself at her age. "Then I'll watch. I'll watch and see who's really lying." That was when I knew. My revenge wouldn't just be about courtrooms or headlines. It would be about legacy. About ensuring that when Emily and Jacob grew older, they would remember me not as the frail woman their father discarded, but as the grandmother who fought back. So, I took another step. With Judith's help, I gathered photographs, letters, recipes, even recordings of my voice telling stories of our family history. We created a memory box, one for each child, sealed with care. Inside were truths Michael couldn't twist. Proof of love, of sacrifice, of who I was before his betrayal. And then, with Gerald's legal know-how, I made sure those boxes would reach the children on their 18th birthdays, no matter what Michael tried to do. A timed gift from the past, carrying the weight of a grandmother's voice long after she was gone. Because revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes, it's about preservation. But that didn't mean I was finished destroying, too. When Anna's divorce proceedings dragged Michael into financial ruin, I struck the final blow. With the help of the advocacy group, I filed for restitution, repayment for the damages, the suffering, the unlawful removal from my home. The figure was staggering, more than Michael could ever afford. And though I didn't care about the money, I cared about the lesson. He would spend the rest of his life paying for what he had done. The day the judgment came through, I sat in the courtroom, my hands folded neatly in my lap, and looked straight at him. He was thinner now, his eyes hollow, his shoulders slumped. "Why?" he mouthed across the room, as though I had betrayed him. And I mouthed back. "Because you did it first." He looked down, defeated. By the time I returned to the nursing home that evening, I felt no triumph, no glee. Just a quiet, steady calm. Because I had taken everything he loved, his reputation, his marriage, his financial stability, even the unquestioning love of his children. Piece by piece, the way he had taken everything from me. And yet, I still visited Emily and Jacob when I could. I still kissed their foreheads, still told them stories, still gave them love. Because my revenge was never meant to hurt them. It was meant to show them the cost of betrayal. Michael stopped visiting entirely after that. Perhaps out of shame. Perhaps out of fear. Perhaps because he could no longer bear to look at the mother who had turned his world upside down. But I didn't need him to visit. I had already won. And as I sat in that nursing home garden, the sun warming my face, I whispered to myself, justice doesn't always come in the way you expect. Sometimes, it wears the face of patience. Sometimes, it wears the face of a grandmother. The war was over. But the story, my story, was far from finished. Because even in victory, there are lessons to share. There's a moment in every story where the storm passes. Where the thunder fades, the rain stops pounding, and all that's left is the silence afterward. That was where I found myself, sitting in the nursing home garden one evening, listening to the faint hum of cicadas as the sun sank low. Michael had vanished from my life completely by then. No visits. No phone calls. Not even a letter. At first, I thought that emptiness would hurt, that I would feel the hollow ache of a mother abandoned. But instead, I felt something else. Freedom. For the first time in years, my life was mine again. My house was safe. My legacy preserved. My grandchildren slowly beginning to see me for who I truly was. And Michael? He was the one fading into silence. But the story doesn't end there. Because revenge is never really about the person you strike back at. It's about the scars left behind, the lessons written in those scars. One afternoon, I received a letter. The handwriting was shaky, hurried, but familiar. Michael. It wasn't long. Just a few sentences. I lost everything. Anna's gone. The kids won't speak to me. I can't find work. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Are you happy now? I read it 3 times. Folded it carefully. Set it on the table. And I laughed, not a cruel laugh, but a tired, bittersweet one. Happy? No. Happiness had nothing to do with it. But satisfied? Yes. Because he finally understood. He finally tasted the bitter medicine he had forced down my throat. But here's the thing about revenge. It doesn't fill the void. It doesn't erase the pain. It just evens the scale. And when the scale balances, you're left staring at the weight of everything that was lost. Do I forgive him? That's the question people always ask when they hear my story. Can a mother forgive a son who betrayed her so completely? The truth is complicated. I don't forgive the act. I don't forgive the cruelty, the arrogance, the way he stripped me of my dignity. But in the quiet of the night, when the halls of this nursing home are still and I hear only my own breathing, I remember the boy he once was. The boy who held my hand on the first day of school. The boy who cried into my shoulder when his father died. The boy I sang lullabies to, who once told me, "Mom, I'll take care of you forever." And I wonder, when did that boy disappear? When did greed and pride swallow him whole? Maybe forgiveness isn't about excusing. Maybe it's about remembering that before he was my betrayer, he was my child. And that contradiction will live inside me until my last breath. But I didn't let that contradiction weaken me. Instead, I turned it into something stronger. With the help of the advocacy group, I began speaking publicly. At community centers. At churches. On small radio stations. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a mirror held up for countless others who had been silenced, discarded, erased by their own families. And people listened. They cried. They nodded. They came up to me afterward, whispering their own stories of betrayal, thanking me for giving them a voice. That became my true revenge. Not just taking back what was stolen, but using the fire Michael lit inside me to light torches for others still trapped in the dark. And Emily, sweet Emily, she grew bolder with each visit. One day she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Grandma, I know Dad lied. I know he hurt you. I'm not going to let him do that to me." In her words, I heard victory. Not the kind that roars with triumph, but the kind that hums quietly, deeply, a victory that will echo long after I'm gone. So here I sit, telling you my story. Not because I want pity. Not because I want applause. But because I want you to ask yourself something. If it happened to me, could it happen to you? Could it happen to someone you love? And if it did, would you have the strength to fight back? My son locked me in a nursing home and took my house. He tried to erase me. He tried to bury me alive in silence. But I didn't disappear. I didn't fade. I fought. And I won. And though I took away everything he loved, what I truly reclaimed was myself. So if you're listening, if you've ever felt discarded, underestimated, betrayed, remember this: age is not weakness. Silence is not defeat. And sometimes, the greatest power we have is patience. Now, I want to leave you with a question. What would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven? Would you have walked away quietly? Or would you have fought for every shred of dignity, every brick of your home, every piece of your legacy? Tell me in the comments below. Share your thoughts, your stories, your truths. Because this isn't just my fight, it's a fight that belongs to so many of us. And if my story touched you, if it made you think twice about the way we treat our elders, then don't let it end here. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, so that these stories, our stories, keep finding their way into the light. Because one day, you might be the one sitting in the silence, wondering if anyone will remember who you are. And when that day comes, I want you to carry my words with you. They can take your house. They can take your freedom. They can take your comfort. But they cannot take your voice, unless you let them. And I, for one, will never let mine be taken again.